Joining me on the Newshour tonight, General VP Malik, retired former army chief. Also joining me tonight is Ajai Malhotra, former ambassador to Russia. General VP Malik, in the middle of offensive that is really showing no signs of abating. In fact, it's escalating with every passing hour. There are Indians who are stuck there, and many families worried back home, and of course wondering how the safe passage of Indian students stuck in Ukraine can be ensured.
Good evening, Navika. Firstly, of course, the news that we got about one of our students who died in the morning due to a shelling in Kharkiv, that was very sad. But I'm thinking that probably we are going to hear more and more sad news like that in the days to come, because the manner in which the Russian forces have stepped up their operations in the built-up areas in the cities like Kharkiv and Kyiv, you will have many more civilian casualties. There will be a lot of destruction. The government infrastructure in terms of electricity, power, water, broadcasting station, things of this nature, they will also be dismantled or destroyed. So what we are going to see in the next few days to come is an extremely grim situation, which already is, but probably it will get more and more grim. Now, as far as the students are concerned, I just now heard Pooja's remarks about it. One thing I must say that, again, it was a traumatic hearing from her. But the other thing was also that I must say that she's a very courageous girl who has been speaking totally cool-headed when she was speaking to you. Now, there are two ways that she suggested. One is to Russia. I'm myself surprised why the Indian government has not sent anybody to Russia on the borders of Ukraine, particularly because Kharkiv is so close to that. That's about 30-35 kilometers from the border. I know that the Russian troops are being inducted from that side, but these highways and all, if we have some people who are stationed on the border and who can negotiate with the Ukrainians, then 35-40 kilometers in the buses, we should be able to negotiate with both the governments. It's not a very simple situation, but I think we must try for that. And the other aspect is that we should also try and get the route open to Belarus on the Chernobyl road, because if the Ukrainian delegation can go to this border to speak to people, the Russian people on this border just across Chernobyl, there is no reason why some of these convoys can be attempted from that side also. I know the very grim situation. I know the warfare that is going on. But in that, we have to try all these desperate measures, or if we can get hold of the train, as Pooja was suggesting, going from Kharkiv to the western border. It's a grim situation. It's going to get worse. But
absolutely, and time is of the essence here.
We have to encourage these boys and girls and other Indian nationals that they should show determination, they should show patience, and they should not expose themselves. They should remain in the safe places, safe havens, and also try and collect as much food and water and other necessities with them for the days to come till they are evacuated.
Well, we're getting information, and Harsh Shringla, the Foreign Secretary, is right now briefing. And he said team from Moscow is in Belgorod examining how to get people out of Kharkov and Sumy. In fact, says worried about Kharkiv, and Sumi, last time I had asked for assurances. India wants urgent safe passage. So that's the big breaking news coming in from Foreign Secretary's briefing. If we can just show pictures of the Foreign Secretary's briefing. But let me ask Ajai Malhotra, former ambassador to Russia. Do you think it's as easy as that to request for safe passage and to get it, especially at this time?
Thank you, Navika. First of all, I want to join in conveying my heartfelt condolences to the family of Naveen Shekharappa. It's deeply saddening to see a young Indian life extinguished in Kharkiv. Yes, as a general pointed out, as a warlike situation develops, a whole combination of disruptive forces come into play. You have confusion, you have disorder, you have turbulence, you have turmoil. And as hostilities develop, which per force they will now, invariably you have devastation, chaos, lawlessness, havoc. So knowing that we're heading in that direction, particularly in Kharkiv, I think it's an eminently sensible suggestion to explore the land option. Kharkiv is near the Russian border, and safe passage is an option that must be explored very actively. I'm happy that from the Indian embassy in Russia, they have somebody at Belgorod. They can go further up, I feel. And it's a reasonable demand to coordinate with the Ukrainians and the Russians. More so, soon Kiev might also come into play, because if they've attacked the radio tower, that means, the debris falling also could affect people who are there, who should keep their head down. And the Russian side, I read in their reports, they mentioned that they would allow people to go down the Kiev-Vasilikov road, which is to the southwest without hindrance. So they're giving an open and safe passage, and I think that also needs to be looked at, because at the moment, Kharkiv and Kiev are the two locations that are particularly worrisome and of concern.
Well, we'll have to wait and watch, because the government is completely in touch with all of this and has taken charge of the situation. How soon can they get the Indians out? Has it been too late? Did they leave it too late? That's what politics in India is all about. As I thank General VP Malik and Ambassador Ajai Malhotra, I introduce my political panel tonight. And joining me tonight, Dr. Sudhanshu Trivedi, Member of Parliament and National Spokesperson of the BJP, Dr. Anand Ranganathan, author, Advocate Kapil Madan, Congress analyst and supporter. But my first question goes to Mr. Sanjay Jha, author and suspended Congress leader. Sanjay Jha, do you think it's the time for Mr. Rahul Gandhi and the Congress in unison, even before reaching out to Naveen's family, to begin to criticize the government? Do you think this situation is of the government's making? Do you think they haven't tried their best?
Navika, if you remember a few days ago, I was on a program on your show with, I think, Nupur Sharma from the BJP. And you remember on that day, I categorically stated, and I want to be consistent on that observation, because Nupur made the statement that everything is hunky-dory, that everything is normal, there is no disruption. In fact, she said the advisories were sent out earlier, and there is absolutely no need for the opposition to create panic. And here we have the tragedy today of the death of young Naveen. Basically the question is, and now listen, my party has been in government for a long time. Some things we did right, some things we could have done better. One of the things that the Congress did right, and I think in supporting Mr. Chandrasekhar's government, is when almost 170,000 Indians who were stranded during the Gulf War were rescued, and there was no drama, no theatrics, there was no logistical screw-up. Everything happened almost effortlessly well. So Indian bureaucrats and politicians are expected to have the experience. And I do believe the Indian Forest Service personnel is outstanding. They all have the ability to make a rescue operation happen brilliantly. Navika, the problem here is not politics. The problem here is that the government of Mr. Modi always tends to give the impression that there is no problem. That if you question them, you are actually being critical for a political agenda, which is, I think, utter, complete, outrageous rubbish. Let me tell you, you watch the videos. I have heard videos, and Navika, I'll tell you what is most disturbing. As a woman, you will, I think, empathize with me here. I've seen videos of several girls, Indian students there, who are saying that Russian soldiers could be abducting, kidnapping, and God knows what are the consequences young girls are facing.
That was also disinformation, which is a legitimate part of war strategy. So, Mr. Sanjay Jha, you know, unless we have all the details, I would really abstain from jumping to conclusions until and unless we have some verified news on that count. But life in war zones, certainly, what I agree with you on is the fact that life in war zone cannot be seen anywhere close to normal. To that, at least, I will agree with you. But Dr. Sudhanshu Trivedi, आप बहुत देर तक कहते हैं कि सब कुछ ठीक है और फिर सिचुएशन हाथ से निकलती है. That's the charge being made by the opposition.
As far as government is concerned, first of all, I would like to pay my condolences to the student who has lost his life, and Prime Minister Narendra Modi has spoken to his father. Now, coming to this situation. On 22nd of January, the government estimated and asked everybody there to register before 31st of January because most of the students which had gone in Ukraine, they were through the agents. So government tried to have a clear-cut data and asked them to leave as early as possible. But we know that there is a human psychology. Even the universities there in which the students were there, they were also trying to convince the students that everything will become normal. But in the present situation, I would just like to say one thing. After Second World War, it is for the first time when civilians are being targeted by a major power of the world. Before that, in all the conflicts, whether it was Lebanon and Somalia or the Korea or the Vietnam or Syria, it was another internal conflict. And now you can understand when the entire capital is besieged and embassy, there was not a big embassy. They are trying, embassy works on the basis of the information from the local government. So embassy is trying its level best, and the government has tried that all the adjoining countries like Romania, Poland, Slovakia, they have agreed that the Indian nationals who will cross over, even if they are having the Indian passport, without visa, they will be allowed to go in. But in my opinion, at this time of conflict, if somebody wants to play politics, Sanjay Jha, I would like to remind, you are saying it was not Chandrasekhar government, he was having 50 MPs and 196 MPs of Congress for supporting in January 91. But can you quote a single instance in which BJP had made any hue and cry at the time? We were the main opposition party at the time. Still, we have not made it an issue, but unfortunately, the Congress today tried to do a press conference and try to create, become a part of the misinformation, propaganda, and creating more confusion. I would just like to ask one. When the government is practically not there in the eastern part, you cannot say whether it is the Russian controlled or the Ukrainian controlled. So government has asked that those who are there should remain in their respective positions, and we are trying to negotiate a safe package. And we managed to get it, you remember, in the Yemen just 4 or 5 years back. For 2 hours, the conflict stopped and the Indians were allowed to take out their flights. And we took around 19 other countrymen, persons from the other countries also. So we are trying to negotiate, and the India will stand diplomatically with the United Nations Security Council and General Assembly is also of the opinion that we should have both connecting from Ukraine and USSR. And it is also reports that the Indian vehicles were not attacked by either Ukrainian soldiers or the Russian soldiers. So that's why we are going ahead trying to find a negotiation.
Well, the latest update that we are getting is from Foreign Secretary Harsh Shringla. Evacuation from Kharkiv is top priority. 12,000 Indian nationals have left Ukraine, which is 60% of Indian nationals who were present in Ukraine. So 40% still stuck there. Dr. Anand Ranganathan, where do you stand on this entire controversy?
Good evening, Navika, and good evening to all my fellow panelists. First of all, my sincere condolences at the tragic death of Naveen. It goes without saying that we must do everything possible to evacuate every last Indian from Ukraine. And we are. The Indian government, to its credit, has been active and hands-on and been on top of things, having given its first advisory to leave Ukraine more than a week before Russia actually invaded. And so I think my personal opinion, of course, is as a layman, I think it is unfortunate that the opposition is politicizing the evacuation. In Ukraine, the Indians are united. They might be trapped, but they are united. And in India, they shouldn't be divided. So, and as for my good friend Sanjay Jha making the analogy with the evacuation from Kuwait, no doubt, and I am with him when I say that it was India's proudest moment as far as evacuations go. It was unbelievable. It was brilliant. But Sanjay, you also know that it was 6 months before the actual war started. Out here, we are right in the middle of an active war. It is not only a war zone, there is a war happening. Just today you've seen how in the second major city of Ukraine, the bombardments and bombings have been going on unabatedly. So there's a different situation. It's not quite the same. But Navika, if I can, because it's a very serious issue, can I address two important issues? And I speak as a layman because there are experts that you've been consulting over the past. To me, there are only two decisive and credible deterrents for any country against invasion and total surrender. One, nuclear, and two, entering into a multi-nation superpower-backed alliance whose credo is attack against one is an attack against all. In today's world, any nation that has either one of these two deterrents, and by corollary, for any nation that doesn't have either one of these two, the writing, I'm afraid, is on the wall. So Ukraine
Correct.
Today, who knows, maybe Taiwan tomorrow. Well, many are asking that question, especially because the Sino-American Mutual Defense Treaty ceased in 1980, and that Taiwan is not a nuclear state anyhow. Let me now come to the other two issues that I analyze. Again, I specify as a layman. Number one, the invasion of Ukraine itself. Navika, I condemn it. It should not have happened. Nothing can compensate the loss and life at the altar of geopolitical or territorial or indeed
Absolutely.
claims of feeling insecure by Ukraine that incidentally gave up its nuclear arsenal to join NATO. I ask, does a small nation have the same right as a large one? Russia is a formidable superpower with a formidable nuclear arsenal. For it to claim that it feels threatened by a small state joining NATO when so many of its border nations are members
But
of
you
NATO.
know, Dr.
simple.
Anand Ranganathan, it's not about Russia versus Ukraine. It's virtually Russia versus the West, the EU, the Americans, and that's what Russia is talking about. So anybody who's looking at this, in a piecemeal manner is going to jump to the conclusion that you just did. I'm completely running out of time. But Kapil Madan, do you think this is a time for politics, or do you think for once we should be united, at least pray for our children coming back home, because they're our children, yours, the BJP's, the Congress's, any other political party, yours and mine as well?
So Navika ji, that's precisely the reason, and that's precisely why the opposition is holding the government accountable. Now, Mr. Trivedi here and Mr. Anand Ranganathan here has given a history of this dispute. However, no one has said anything about the girl who was there on your channel 10-15 minutes ago, wherein she said that the situation is petty there. In fact, in working hours, nobody is answering her calls. Now, what does that signify? I can understand that you may have some, troubled times there, and the officials may not be available in all hours.
It signifies that there is trouble, there is a war zone, and for me, what it signifies is we take Pooja's number, hand it over to Operation Ganga controllers to give it to the control room so that Pooja and her contacts can be actually reached out to and gotten back. Not obviously necessary every time that the government of India is going to be able to reach the last person. Well, that's what we Indians are there for, to pick up rather than finding holes in the government's entire rescue operation. The fact is, we give lend our helping hand and connect the two sides of the wire and find our own people to bring back home. That's where I'd like to leave this. Thank you very much to my guests for joining me on part one, debate one of the News Hour. On the other side, taking a short break, but coming up is Russia versus Ukraine right here on the News Hour. Former Ukraine Prime Minister takes on the editor of Sputnik, which has been banned by the European Union. Why is the free world banning the Russians? Questions coming up on the other side.